Good evening and welcome to a fourth in a series of candidate forums for the candidates for office on November 2nd that is being brought to you by Cayuga Community College and the Citizen, shown on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, and ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, and played on the college's radio station 89.1. I'm your moderator, Guy Cosentino. On November 2nd, voters in the 11th Legislative District will go to the polls to choose a member of the Cayuga County Legislature. The current incumbent, Elaine Daly, a Democrat who is also on the Working Families line, is seeking a second term and facing Republican and conservative Campanello Jr. The 11th district for Cayuga County is one of the districts up this year within the city. There are 3 this year that have races, and it's located in the northeast section of the city of Auburn. The position of a member of the Cayuga County Legislature pays $13,500 annually. Currently the legislature is made up of 15 members with 6 Democrats, 5 Republicans, 1 conservative, and 3 non-affiliated members, with about half the legislature up this year. And I think we're bringing you all of them but one of those forums this year. With several incumbents not running for re-election, control of the legislature could change this January depending on the outcome of all of these elections. Representing the press today is a familiar face to those who read The Citizen. Jeremy Boyer is the executive editor of The Citizen. He will be asking the questions of our candidates as usual. I appreciate him being here. He runs a column every Thursday, so once you're done watching this, go to your Citizen and read his column as well. With the COVID-19 worldwide pandemic, we've had to make some changes to the way we've done forums from in the past. So both candidates are in the studio. We have limited the number of individuals in the studio. Everyone is being masked except for the candidates and Mr. Boyer and myself, who are all 6 feet apart. Once we are seated, or in my case standing, they can take off their masks. Prior to the taping of the show, we flipped a coin to see who would go first in their opening statements, and that will be reversed as we finish. That order was decided with Mr. Campanella speaking first, and then Elaine Daly second. So we'll turn to opening statements. First of all, to both of you, welcome to this forum. We're going to hear from Campanello Jr., who's on the Republican and conservative lines. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody that helped put this together and to give me a chance to come and introduce myself to the voters of District 11. A little bit about me. I'm a family man. I've been married to my wonderful wife for almost 17 years. I have 3 amazing adult sons and 3 beautiful grandchildren. I've lived in Cayuga County most of my life, and for nearly 29 years I've worked for the Cayuga County Sheriff's Office. I'm retiring in January, and with that said, I'd be able to devote my time to be the legislator. Some of my platform, public safety. When elected, I'd like to get together with other like-minded legislators from other counties and push back on New York State with some of this bail reform. It has some pros and cons, but mostly cons. It's not a matter of if or when somebody gets hurt, because as a matter of fact, people are getting hurt, even right here in our own county. Water quality is an issue for me. We've been dealing with water issues for a very long time, and I think it's time that we buckle down and really put things together to put this to bed. Lastly, is taxes. I'm not a person to make promises I can't keep, so I won't sit here and say that I'd be able to lower taxes. But what I can promise you is that I'd be a watchdog for you as far as how your taxpayers' money is spent. It's time for a change in local politics. It's time for the voters to have a voice, and I will be that voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campanella. We'll now hear from Elaine Daly, who is the incumbent, who is finishing off her first term in the legislature. She's on the Democratic and Working Families Party line. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much. Yep. I also appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I am running for re-election in District 11. For those who know me know, I'm a lifelong resident of Auburn. I've lived in District 11 for over 35 years. I've worked in county government even longer, starting as a public health nurse, holding multiple health department positions, and ending my career as the Director of Health and Human Services. I have and continue to be active in community services. I'm serving on the legislature and a number of community boards. I ran in 2017, 3 years after I retired, to get back involved in the work of county government, to apply my experience to the work as a legislator, and that is exactly what I've done. From a Health and Human Services perspective and as Chair of Health and Human Services, I've been involved in a number of important and challenging work that's been done by multiple county departments. Some of the concerns during my term had to do with the COVID pandemic and its impact on children and families, drinking water protection, the opioid crisis, the increased mental health service needs we're seeing, and a plan to deliver services to those over 60, which is becoming a huge undertaking. I came to the job with a lot of experience, and 4 years later, that experience has only grown. So has my knowledge of the county, of the various county departments, of the county workforce, and the complex issues impacting our community. I've come to appreciate there is more to governing than just paying the mandated costs that the county has and they must pay, and there are a lot of them. We need stable and consistent leadership. We need to maintain essential services in a fiscally responsible way. I'm mindful of the challenges we face, the need to continue to focus on Owasco and Cayuga Lake, getting through our COVID pandemic, making upgrades to our infrastructure. The decrease we have seen in our county population and the size of our labor force illustrates the work we need to do around economic development and workforce development, enhancements of quality of life for the people who live here. There has a lot of good work that's been started. Work on the watershed management plan, upgrades to our parks and trails, funding for the phases of the Cayuga County Water and Sewer Master Plan, support for the development of a regional water plan, and the survey of our broadband needs. We find the county in good financial shape with a healthy fund balance in spite of those challenges that we have faced. Now with the American Rescue Funds, we're in a position to make investments in the community that I hope will pay off in the long run. While it's not often easy to come to consensus, we must find a way to agree on those priorities and move them forward. I'm ready to finish the work I have been so closely involved in. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator. We will now turn to Jeremy Boyer, who will have questions for either or both of you. We'll rotate, as we said before. Allison, who's a student here, has a card, and she'll raise that up when you've used 1.5 minutes of your time, and a red card to finish your statement, not your soliloquy, at 2 minutes. And then if we go back and forth, we'll give 1 minute responses for that. So, Mr. Boyer, welcome back to the studio.
Thank you, and thanks to both of you for being willing to do this and have a discussion about, hopefully we can get through a bunch of issues here to give people a sense of where you each stand. I'd like to start with something that just became news this week in terms of an announcement from the Attorney General's office. Funds are going to be distributed to counties around the state, including Cayuga, from some litigation against pharmaceutical companies related to opioids. And for Cayuga County, it could be about $1 million coming here. And my question for both of you is, with that money coming to the county, how should it be spent?
Mr. Campanella, you'll have 2 minutes on this issue of how to spend the Attorney General announcement.
Really, I wasn't prepared for this question. As you said, it just came up. I think we need to go more with also educating not just law enforcement, but also the parents and schools about getting some information out there so that we maybe can stop some of this bad stuff from happening. As far as rehabilitation and stuff like that, that also is important as far as what we're talking about. Too many kids, our kids, are dying from this heroin epidemic, and we all know that's what it leads to, is from the pharmaceutical end of things. So I wish I had been a little bit more prepared for that one, but it's pretty much my answer right now. I will learn more about it, though.
Okay. Legislator Daly, this issue of the Attorney General's announcement earlier this week?
Yes. So far, the county has accepted, at least in a very rapid time, because they had to be signed off on, two settlements that I'm aware of that the county is looking at. One was $254,000 to $700,000 a range, and the other was $1.4 million, I think, but over 18 years. So it is two of a number that we're anticipating, and we've already started some dialogue about the opportunity to reinvest some of those monies, and especially in the work of the Healing Community Study. That particular study is coming to an end in June of 2022. The impact dollars that we've been using to offset and fight the opioid epidemic here will no longer be available because it was the research study for 4 years. So there is an opportunity, I think, at that point to look at, instead of just taking this in, really reinvesting in some of the work that's already been done to battle the opioid epidemic. And I would support that.
Thank you. Mr. Boyer.
Another windfall, so to speak, for the county is the federal COVID relief funds, and decisions about how to spend those are going to be a big project for the legislature. It's already started some of that work and hearing from department heads about some of their wish lists, but I'm pretty sure the wish list is bigger than the amount of money that's going to be there. So I'd like to hear from you what you think the priorities should be, if there's a specific, certain areas of the kinds of things that should be spent or that the money should be invested on, or, is it a certain parameter in the kind, the types of programs that we need to be looking at. But just in general, what are your thoughts on how you're going to evaluate the spending of those monies?
Okay. We'll start with Legislator Daly and then Mr. Campanella.
The American Rescue funds that are coming into this county, 14.8, I think, 14 million, just over $14 million. We've already received 7 million of those. We have, as you say, we have a laundry list of things that we've already gotten from the department heads. And this was really to start the work of looking at how to prioritize the spending of that. I think we've made a general discussion that we're looking at investing those dollars on one-time investments in our community, not certainly anything that we would use to balance the budget on an ongoing basis. I think there's opportunities, and again, we need to wait to see what happens with the infrastructure money, but there's opportunities to look at support for some of the water and sewer projects. There's opportunities to support what we are waiting to hear, which is the assessment on our broadband survey that is coming forward. But there are also opportunities, I think, because 6 to 8 million of this 14 million falls into the lost revenue category, where we have a lot of discretion on how we spend it. I think it almost looks like the list that we're getting could be a capital plan for the county, investments in buildings and equipment. I think we should look at, there's a lot of requests coming from soil and water. So if water quality is a priority, there's an ample time to spend some of those resources on things that will impact the ability to look at improving our water quality. I just think at this point that we are given the task of attempting to look at establishing some criteria for its use, and really where the 15 of us look at, see our priorities. And from there, the hope is that we will come to some agreement, and the money has to be encumbered by 2024 and spent by 2026. So we're just starting this work, but I think it's important work, and we do have to come to some agreement, and sooner than later.
Okay, thank you, Legislator. Mr. Campanella, on how you would spend, whether you consider it a windfall or money given to the county over the next several years.
I don't believe it's a windfall, and I know there's going to be regulations and limitations on how this money is spent. The thing that sticks out in my mind is that it's about COVID relief, and I think that's how we should go. Yes, there's going to be some areas where money needs to be put into certain things, but again, I'm strongly for COVID relief. My opponent mentioned something about broadband. That would help, because when the kids were going to school, some of them didn't have good broadband to learn from home. So I mean, I get some of that stuff. Going to something that has nothing to do with COVID, like hypothetically take the Emerson Park. I think we could find other monies to make upgrades and stuff there instead of using this money, which in my opinion should be allotted for COVID relief.
Legislator, you'll have 1 minute to follow up, and Mr. Campanella will have the same minute if he wishes as well.
There are categories of spending on this money. One is public health response, one is negative impact of COVID, one is the lost revenue, which is the $6 to $8 million of flexibility that we have, and the other is water and broadband. And in the information that we had received under public health response, there is criteria that talks about park enhancement as being one of those categories that fit that criteria. So although we have earmarked $1 million for Emerson Park, we have not entered into any agreement, but we did it to leverage additional funds to make those enhancements.
Okay. Mr. Boyer.
All right. Another issue that the legislature is going to have to deal with in the next 12 months is redistricting. You're running for a seat that carries a 2-year term instead of a 4 because the legislature wanted to align all the districts so it would be easy to make changes in where district lines are drawn, as well as perhaps the number of districts. So I'd like to ask you both in terms of the number of districts, sort of the two-part question of, do you think 15 is the right number, or should it go up or down, and why? And then within that, the city of Auburn has 5. You're looking to represent District 11 in Auburn. Do you think the number of districts in Auburn should be changed? And if so, any ideas on how that should be arranged?
Okay. Mr. Campanella, you're going first on this issue of size and of the legislature and redistricting itself.
Thank you. I believe that it definitely needs to be looked at. There's the weighted vote that we've been talking about prior to this. The thing is that I kind of lost my spot here. It should be, in my opinion, 1 vote, 1 person. So each legislator. This weighted thing is a little crazy. As far as reducing the districts, maybe a little, go down to 11 possibly. We all know it has to be an odd number as opposed to an even number. But it definitely needs to be looked at as far as the weighted vote is going.
Okay. Legislator, this issue for the size of the legislature and redistricting itself.
Yeah, well, first the redistricting itself. I think when the proposition was on the ballot that allowed for odd legislators who are running to run this year and only run for 2 years really set the stage that the expectation by the community is that this was done and they approved it so that we would actually look at finally redistricting and getting away from the weighted vote. So I think we do have a responsibility and an obligation to seriously take a look at that now that the census data is out, and to draw the lines, redraw the lines, make the districts certainly more, they're not as legal as they should be at this point. They should be not more than a 10% difference. So I think redistricting and redrawing the lines absolutely is going to happen. There is probably, I think there are 6 city legislators, and the likelihood that 6 will stay, I think, is low based on the population loss. But we do need some serious conversation about how we're going to approach this. And there has been some discussion about perhaps getting away from 15. Maybe it's too unruly to get a lot of things done, and reducing the size either to 13 or 11. But no definitive decision's been made.
Okay, Mr. Boyer.
Okay, a question that's it's a personal question for both of you, in that you're both have been or are in a similar boat of being a county employee, or a former county employee, soon to be former county employee, and just how you balance and handle potential conflicts. Conflicts is probably too strong of a word, but you're going to have to make decisions, and you've had to make decisions about past, people's departments that you once ran, people that you once managed, and how do you sort of evaluate that from a legislator point of view? How do you use that experience in making your decisions, and how do you keep that experience from becoming an issue?
So, Legislator Daly, you get to go first on this one.
Well, I guess I have, and so would Mario, have insight into what it's like to be in the workforce of the county as well as in a legislative seat. When I first was elected and I was put on as chair of Health and Human Services, I think there was some that said, gee, I'm not sure, you should be the chair of this, And I'm like, well, certainly makes more sense to put me as chair of Health and Human Services than it does to put me as chair of Public Works. I think I have been able to bring a lot of experience and background in very complicated issues. I have not felt that I couldn't be objective or that I couldn't make difficult decisions. And I don't think there was any expectation by any of the staff there that I would do it any other way. So I have not found that it's been very difficult to do it. I think I have insight in both areas, and that's only beneficial.
Okay, Mr. Campanella, you have 2 minutes on the subject as well.
First of all, no, I don't have any experience in county legislative business, obviously, but I have successfully run 8 academies with the sheriff's office, and there's usually a lot of conflict there, to quote you, and dealing with different. I mean, I've always said I've been in charge of training for a long time. I've always said that, I'm in charge of training over 100 people and probably 150 different personalities. So there's usually some conflict with scheduling, with the academy, disciplining, the recruits when need be and stuff like that. And I believe I have what it takes to do that. I also used to, before I started working for the sheriff's office, I was the Border City Water and Sewer District superintendent. And I've had to make, decisions there and budgeting issues and stuff like that. So I think I have what it takes to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Boyer.
Okay, we'll get into a water quality discussion now. And I think, Mr. Campanella, you alluded to the need to continue to do more to try to improve water quality. So I'd like to hear from both of you. I think everyone agrees that we can't just stop today and the water is going to be pure and clean. What are the extra things or the next steps that we need to take in preserving and in ultimately improving the water quality for, especially Owasco Lake being the top primary source of drinking water, but also Cayuga Lake, which is also a source.
Mr. Campanella, you'll have 2 minutes on this subject of water quality.
Okay. I think there's a lot of things that can be done. I know that the county has been working very hard at trying to figure out and fix why we have such an issue. I think a quick fix, in my opinion, for at least getting to better water is to maybe go deeper into the lakes to get away from the bacteria and stuff. I think that's something that we should think about as far as watershed and stuff that is leaching into our lakes. I know that they're doing a lot to try to fix that, but I don't think it's enough being done right now to make it go away. We've been dealing with this for a very, very long time, and it has to stop.
Thank you. Legislator, this issue of what more can be done on water quality.
Well, I went to hear the preliminary report of the 9-element plan. The formal plan and the formal draft is not out, but they had the beginning of hearing the results of the 9-element plan at BOCES. And they, of the sobering remarks that I heard Dr. Halfman say, it will take 10 years to see a change in the actual water quality. But we have made some real strides. Yes, we have the rules and regs that have been revised that are still not back from the state, and they've been submitted since December, I believe. But this 9-element plan, in my mind, has been a long time coming. I don't think there were any huge surprises as to what's causing the nutrient loading in the lake. But it is the 9-element plan that can really target where the nutrients are coming. It is the 9-element plan that will help to deal with the best management practices. And it's this 9-element plan that will allow the county to go out and secure additional funding to do the mitigation that's needed. So I think that's a really great start, and it will not be overnight, but we need to continue to chip away at this.
Mr. Boyer?
On the rules and regulations revision that you mentioned is still with the state. Do you support? Would you like to see the state adopt those?
I certainly would like to see the state adopt those. I know the city of Auburn has did a resolution to encourage the state. We just talked about that at the Board of Health, that we really need to communicate with them that, it's been long enough. And, those rules and regs, they cover a multitude of things: pesticide application, agriculture, septic. I don't think there's any sacred cows in there, but those are the changes that are needed to make some impacts. And they do need to be moved forward and approved.
All right, Mr. Campanella, you'll have 2 minutes on this subject as well.
As far as the rules and regulations, I'm not familiar with those, and I apologize for that. I prepared for so much other things that I didn't think about that stuff. But it is important. I'd like to learn more about it, and possibly I do agree with my opponent that we should probably adopt those and look into that stuff.
Okay, Mr. Boyer.
All right. We'll shift to a different health topic, and that's COVID-19 and the county's role in dealing with COVID-19. A big issue currently is getting people vaccinated and providing testing resources for people. So for both of you, I'd like to ask the first question about do you agree with the county health department's efforts to promote the vaccine? They're encouraging everyone that's eligible to get vaccinated, saying it's safe and effective and our best tool for beating back COVID. So I'd like to start with that question, and then we'll move on to another related one.
Mr. Campanella, you're up first on this particular issue of the vaccinations.
I think the county has done a wonderful job in promoting the vaccination. The only thing is I don't want to see is it mandated like it's starting to happen, in the state level, and for nursing, for 2020 and part of 2021, our nurses were heroes, and then now they're being fired because they're not being vaccinated. I think there's other alternatives for that. I mean, it worked. If they have some reason that they don't feel comfortable, they don't feel safe, they don't understand what's going on with the vaccination, or don't know enough about it, maybe offer testing or something like that instead of just outright firing them. So I don't think anything should be mandated to that extreme. But yes, education and trying to get more information out there for the public to understand it. I mean, I'm vaccinated, and I've had COVID just recently within the last 3 weeks. So I'm glad that I did, but it was my choice, and I'm glad I made that choice, and it should be that way for other people.
Okay. Legislator, this question about the mandating vaccines and the county's response.
As far as the work of the county health department to encourage as many people who are eligible to be vaccinated, I firmly believe that that is our way around or out of this. We're going to see these surges until we have enough people protected in this community so that the virus won't continue to circulate. I applaud their efforts to try to get as many people immunized as possible. I think it's the strategy that will be the most effective. We're not there yet, but I continue to advocate, as they do, for anyone that's eligible to consider being vaccinated. As far as the mandate, in terms of the executive order that the governor did in terms of the healthcare facilities. You know, I think it was a bold move given the staffing issues they have, but you know, it certainly has proven to increase the vaccination rates in a number of cases. I do personally believe that people seeking health care should not have to worry about being exposed to COVID-19, so I don't find her executive order offensive in any way.
Okay. Before we continue, I just want to let people know where we are and what we're doing. This is the 11th Legislative District Forum here at Cayuga Community College, sponsored by the college and the Citizen. We have both candidates in the studio, Elaine Daly, who's on the Democratic and Working Families line, and is the current incumbent, and her challenger, Mario Campanello Jr., who's on the Republican and Conservative lines. The 11th District is one of 3 districts open in the city of Auburn this year of the 6, but this is the only one in the city where there is an incumbent facing a challenger. The district is in the northeast corner of the city, roughly from the hospital over to Hoops Park in that area. That is a really horrible map I just drew, but that's roughly what it is. And we're delighted to have in the studio, as usual, Jeremy Boyer, the executive editor of the Citizen, to ask the questions. Mr. Boyer.
Okay, to kind of follow up on the mandate question, I've heard you each give me your thoughts on the healthcare mandate, perhaps, but there are some governments around the state that are doing mandates for all staff. Cayuga County, unless it's the health department, which is covered by the state mandate, so far has not done that. My question, given the size of the county workforce, is a county workforce mandate, county government workforce, to be clear, mandate something that the county should do as well.
Okay. Elaine Daly, you're first on this issue.
As far as a county mandate, there has been no current discussion about us as a legislature mandating the county workforce be vaccinated. There is, in my opinion, if we were to go down that path and it would require a vote of the 15 of us, it would likely not pass in terms of getting support. There's union issues that would have to be taken into consideration. I'm not saying it's not a discussion that we might not need to have, but at this point, there has been no talk about a mandate for the county workforce. I did inquire before I came what the actual vaccination rate is for the county workforce, and we're about 70% of our county workforce is currently vaccinated right now. As I said, I think it would be a tough fight to have, and at this point, there has been no discussion about making that a mandate.
Okay. Mr. Campanella, on this issue of mandating county employees to be vaccinated.
Being a county employee, we get daily updates with COVID from the health department. From what I'm seeing, it's more people that are vaccinating are coming down with COVID than people that are not. Not that I don't know, maybe because they're wearing masks, the people are not vaccinated. I'm not sure, but and again, I've been vaccinated and I came down with COVID. As far as mandating it for the county employees, I agree with my opponent. I don't know if that would be. It would take a lot, and I don't think it would come too easily. Again, with the unions and stuff like that, I don't think it would pan out well.
Legislator, you have 1 minute to follow up.
Just in my opinion on the one part of the statement about the breakthrough cases. There certainly are breakthrough cases. Not every vaccination is 100% effective. But in my mind, the breakthrough cases continue to come because the circulating virus is in the community and the transmission is high. To me, going back again to having more people immunized and protected, I think would go a long way to prevent further outbreaks and further breakthrough infections for people that are vaccinated.
Thank you. Boyer.
Okay, well, let's go to a happy subject: county government leadership structure. The legislature has been operating essentially in sort of an interim form, where the chairperson has been the day-to-day manager or top management official for county government. as the legislature looks to decide whether it wants to make a change and go towards an elected executive, go back to the appointed administrator that had been in effect for about a decade, or some other thing that maybe no one's thought of. So I'd like to hear from each of you on what you think your preference is for where the county should go in terms of its leadership structure long term.
Mr. Campanella, you're first on this subject.
I think it's pretty easy here. For years and years, we've had chairmen appointed and voted on by the other legislators. That worked for a very long time until it didn't. And then we hired 3 different administrators to run the day-to-day business. And in my opinion, that was a disaster. Not only that, it cost the county taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars because we had per contract when these people left for one reason or another. My personal opinion is I believe we should have an elected county executive to run data. Let the people decide who's going to do what instead of leaving it up to 15 people to decide who's going to run day-to-day business with the county.
Legislator Daly, on this issue of county structure and leadership.
I guess I never initially thought when I first came on that I would be in any way supportive of a charter and an elected executive. Although if that is the only way that we can get stability in county government, I think that may be the way we have to go. And certainly counties that go to a charter do it to clearly put someone in charge of county government that, apart from the powers independent of the legislature. But I think, we should be aware that, if we are to move to a charter, and that is a multi-year process, we've just spoke the word, we've done no work to get us there. It would really, there is no guarantee that someone who could get elected countywide would have the professional skills and leadership to run the $152 million county operation. So we would likely be building a team of people around that person anyway. When I first ran, I was very hopeful that the stability in county leadership would be there. I swore that we should be supportive and it would be good for the county year after year to have some consistency, and obviously that didn't turn out that way. But I do believe that we do need, in addition to a chairman of the legislature, which could change year after year as well, some form of stable county professional management.
Thank you. Mr. Boyer.
Along the lines of what the role of a legislator is in that day-to-day operation, I'd like to hear each of your thoughts on how you handle or would handle a circumstance where a constituent or an employee or a constituent comes to you with a concern about county government. Is that something that you get into with the department head and work out one-on-one, or what are the steps that you do when you get that information to try to help the constituent or the employee?
I believe we're up for this question to Ms. Daly.
This is reminiscent of the conversation we had when we were talking about a county administrator and how county legislatures need to get out of the operations and get into governing. We currently just have a chair. I made the case when we had a county administrator that those kind of concerns would be brought forward to that county administrator and they would be involved in some of the response. Right now, we have a chairman and that's all we have. So if we get, I think we as county legislators are involved far too much in operations now, and we've had to force to be because we don't have the internal structure. But generally, if I have a constituent issue right now, I guess I would talk to our chair about it, and at this point, I would have to go to the affected department because that's currently all the structure that we have.
Thank you, Legislator. Mr. Campanella, on the issue of how you would deal with constituent queries.
It's going to, depending on what it is, and with the constituent, I would feel obligated that I would have to move it up to the proper channels to make sure that it is dealt with properly. Again, it all depends on what it is and what it's about. But I think that we available that should be able to help with stuff like that. You know, if it's a county employee, as you asked, again, just work it up through the chain until you get to Health and Human Services.
Anything to add, or we're okay? Mr. Boyer, we'll get you back on camera in a second. We're just trying to tie some cameras down.
No problem. In terms of, well, I guess that's enough discussion on form of government. One decision that you make right away when you get onto the legislature in January is who will be chair. I have spoken with Elaine McNabb Coleman recently, and she indicated to me that she would be interested in doing it again, continuing. And there may be others, and we have no idea how this election is going to turn out, so we don't know which parties might have the majority. But I'd like to ask your opinions of the job she's done and whether you would support her in re-election for a chair or not.
So, Mr. Campanella, on both her performance and would you reappoint Elaine McNabb Coleman? You have 2 minutes on this.
Thank you. I think Elaine's done a wonderful job with everything that she's had to deal with over the last couple of years, especially. As far as if I would pick her again, I mean, we'd have to see who was in office and who the legislators are. Right now, I think she's done a great job. She knows what she's doing, and I wouldn't oppose picking her again. But again, I'd have to see what the pool would be to choose from.
Okay. Ms. Daly, would you, how has the performance been of Elaine McNabb Coleman, but also would you vote for her again to be chair?
When she first became chair, and I think she's been chair 2 years now, which has been a real plus in terms of some continuity, she said that she was looking forward to being held accountable for the work that she's done. And she has done a significant amount of work. The time she's put in, I think she's done an excellent job. I would have no qualms about voting for her for chair again if she was interested in doing it.
Mr. Boyer?
Okay. One of the issues with Auburn districts over the years has been dialogue, communication, cooperation with city government, county-city government relations. Just like to kind of get your general thoughts on how is that evaluate how that relationship is going these days, and what do you think are the keys to maintaining a productive relationship going forward?
Okay. And legislator, you're up first on this. You have 2 minutes on this issue of relationship.
You know, I think in general, I don't have a ton of conversations day to day. I think there are opportunities for the city and the county in terms of projects to be working together on. We talked last night at the committee meeting about the homeless issue and its impact to both the county and to the city of Auburn. Those are natural opportunities I think we could leverage some funds and support to work together on. I think there's generally a lot of confusion about even what a city legislator does, because it's not the same as the city council. You know, our role is to oversee the delivery of county services, although we do represent, our constituents are part of the city of Auburn. But I think there are, through shared services, there are some opportunities to work together. I don't see the relationship as adversarial in any way, but we are not working as closely, I guess, as people might think we are.
Okay. Mr. Campanella, on this issue of city-county relations.
I'm not real familiar with how the city and the county work together. I know that it's an imperative that they do. So I don't really have a great answer for that question. I'd like to learn more about it. I would assume that they would do work together closely in certain things and get along, basically.
Mr. Boyer.
To kind of go back to sort of a related question when I asked you about the chair, is control of the legislature, and it's kind of, I guess technically the Democratic Party has the majority, although it's not really a majority because it's 6, but they have the most. So both sides are, certainly at least the party leaders would like to have a clear majority for the legislature. So as a candidate for each party, kind of make your case for why you think it's better to have Democratic majority or it's better to have a Republican majority on the legislature starting in 2022.
Mr. Campanella, why should the Republicans be in charge?
That's a peculiar question. I think that once elected, it's got to be more bipartisan than who's in charge is whether Republicans or Democrats. I mean, that seems to be an issue not just locally but nationally too. It's I've noticed going campaigning that if you ask somebody to, they're for you and they go to, you ask them to put a sign in your yard and they don't want to deal with that because they don't want their neighbors to know how they voted because there's so much tension going on with that. But to answer your question, as far as who should run it, why should the Republicans be able to? That's a very peculiar question. I think once you're in the office, sometimes that party's got to have some different ways to look at things and work together. I mean, that's what it is. We're supposed to work together so that we can do what's right for the voters and the constituents of the county.
Elaine Daly, do you want to make a case for you and your fellow Democrats?
Well, it is. You're right. It is very close at this point in time. Even if everyone that caucuses with the Democrats, and there's one independent, votes for something, we don't have the weighted vote to carry anything without support from someone else on the legislature. I think it is. Who's in control. There is a lot at stake there. The chairman of the legislature forms the committees. I think I guess I'd be lying to say that I was hoping the Republicans would be in control. I think that, there are a lot of us that have done a lot of work. Again, party control is a big deal. And there's always a fight to see who's going to end up in control.
Mr. Boyer.
I always hear candidates talk about they want to represent the will of the constituents. They want to do what the constituents want them to do. So my question for both of you is, how do you figure that out? How do you figure out what the residents in your district want you to do, how they want you to vote, how they want you to prioritize things? So it kind of goes to the question of how do you stay in touch with constituents?
Legislator Daly, you'll have 2 minutes on this subject.
I again, being a city legislator, I do not hear probably what the city councils hear in terms of the issues that are affecting the city of Auburn. But I think it's been fairly clear, especially during this pandemic, that there are people, when the going gets rough, the government, they expect from their government to meet their needs. And I've heard from people in response to the COVID pandemic and where they feel that there's not enough testing, where they feel there's not enough vaccination. I think there is an expectation that they get service for the taxes that they pay. I think they expect, to have a government that's responsive to their needs. I think most of the voters know that a lot of what the county does is mandated in terms of mandated costs, but they also expect where we have discretion that we will exercise it and be a steward of their tax dollar. So those are the biggest impacts that I've had in terms of residents calling me. If they didn't like a vote I made, they'd make it known. But mostly it's about the role of government in meeting their needs, especially most recently.
Mr. Campanello, the issue of how do you respond to constituents and get their input?
My plan, if elected, is to not campaign just before the election, is to continue to campaign to the people, get out there and talk to the constituents, keep an open line. I know, and as you'll hear in my closing, I want to keep an open line and not be forgotten. Not forget about the constituents during my term. That's pretty simple. If you ask me, it's to stay connected with the constituents so that they know that you're there for them, and you can. Yeah, you make one person happy, you may make two mad. I get that and understand that, but I would do whatever I could to keep in touch with the constituents.
Mr. Boyer, you're down to your last question.
All right. Well, I think Mr. Costantino mentioned $13,500, the salary for this position, which, depending on how hard you work at it, could be a pretty low hourly wage. So my question for you, and I know this is like a political third rail. You never say I think the elected office should get a raise, but let me put it to you in the sense of, what about those who feel like we do need to raise elected official salaries in order to attract more candidates, more quality candidates into public office? Is that something that the legislature should consider, perhaps as part of the redistricting that's going to be discussed?
Mr. Campanello, you'll get this question as well first.
It's in my case is going to be kind of unique. I will be retired when I take over a legislator, and you can only earn so much money after that. So I don't mean to make light of it. I know that there's certain things that legislators have to do. I know that I believe there's a bonus for each committee they sit on. I don't think I didn't get in this for the money. I got in it to do a job. So
thank you, Mr. Campanella. Legislator Daly, change the pay.
I laugh about that. One of the first votes I was going to have to take there was discussion about, because the salary for the county legislature had not moved in 15 years. And the first vote was to actually raise it from 10,000 something to kind of where it's at right now. And of course I did not support that, because I felt the first official vote I should take after taking office is not to raise my salary. I did feel that, it was adequate. Again, I'm not doing this for the money either. If you are serious about this job, it is a big time commitment. If you are a chair, it's a chair of a committee who gets an additional stipend, a $2,000 stipend. And when this was passed so many years ago, there is a 1% increase that happens each year, so $130 some. So it isn't stagnant as it was, but at this point in time, I probably wouldn't make the recommendation that, as we redistrict. And again, if we're going to be reducing the size of the legislature and we're looking at continuing this committee form of government, there likely will be more work for less people. But at this point, I haven't even thought of that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Boyer, for your thoughtful questions as usual. We're going to now turn to both of our candidates and have them make their closing statements. And as we said, they drew lots or flipped a coin at the beginning. And Elaine Daly, who is the incumbent in the 11th District, who's on the Democratic and Working Families line, will have 2 minutes for her closing statement.
Thank you. I certainly won't need 2 minutes, but I do want to take the opportunity to thank the college and you both as moderators for the opportunity to participate in this debate. I also want to thank the voters who supported me in the past and the voters who will continue to support me as I seek re-election. I said 4 years ago I would work hard if elected, and I have. I care about this community. I care about the people who live here. I'm ready to invest my time and energy in the work of local government. I agree with the citizen coverage that it is local elections that have the biggest direct impact on people's everyday life. It's important that you cast your vote, and I'm asking for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator. Mr. Campanello, Mario Campanello Jr. is on the Republican and Conservative lines. You have 2 minutes for your closing.
Thank you. In closing, again, I'd like to thank everyone, Guy Cosentino, Jeremy for being here at the college, and thank Elaine Daly as well. But I'd really like to thank the voters for watching and trying to figure out who they're going to vote for. Again, I've said earlier, go to my Facebook page, click on About, and then send me an email. I want to keep an open channel between the voters and myself if elected. And another thing that I wanted to bring up is while out campaigning, I've been told more than once that it's just a local election and my vote doesn't count or doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. There's been a lot of local elections that have been decided by, between 10 and 20 votes over the few years that I know of. So your vote does matter. November 2nd is right around the corner, less than 3 weeks away. I'm asking for your support so that I can represent you. Early voting starts next week. Just remember that it's your vote, your voice, and again, I want to be your voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campanella, and thank you both for taking the time to do this forum, not only for the voters in your district, but also for the community in general. We know it's not always easy being out there on the campaign trail. We wish you luck over the next several weeks as you go door to door and see people in your district. We also want to not only thank the citizen for their continued support of these forums and Mr. Boyer, but we also want to thank you for tuning in to listen to these two candidates as they put themselves out there for this election season to talk to you about the issues. We do encourage you to go vote on November 2nd, and as Mr. Campanella has mentioned, early voting does start next week, I believe on the 23rd, and so you can vote early. You may not vote often in New York still. We'll return this Tuesday with our 5th candidate forum. This is the first of 2 forums next week for open seats on the Cayuga County Legislature. On Tuesday, we'll have the Democratic Working Families Christina Clarko facing Republican Conservative Michael Pendergrass to fill the seat of Legislator Timothy Lattimore, a Republican who is term limited out of the legislature. Next Thursday, we'll be back in the studio with our last legislative race on the 21st. We'll have the candidates who are seeking the seat being vacated by Ryan Foley, a Democrat who decided not to seek another term. They are Brian Dahl on the Republican Conservative lines and Brian Muldrow, who is running on the Democratic and Working Families line. So you can tune in for both of those forums. And then we'll finish our forums with our biannual City Council forum on Tuesday, October 26th, with all 4 candidates running for 2 seats. Incumbent Terry Cuddy will be in the studio, as well as Ginny Kent, Mr. Lattimore, who I mentioned, and Rob Otterstader. City Councilor Debbie McCormick has chosen not to seek re-election this year. Because of the number of forums we have this year, the citizen does put them on their website, auburnpub.com, almost immediately from when they are taped. And so you can go onto them or Cayuga Media to tune into them here at the college or on our radio station 89.1. They are also going to be on Auburn Regional Media Access, and those are Spectrum Channels 12 and 98, Files 31, and those will be at 5 o'clock this Saturday. We return to our regular programming on Election Day with 2 Inside Government shows, one with Auburn Superintendent Jeffrey Parazola and another one with City Manager Jeff Dygart. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. I want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a good night, have a great tomorrow, be safe, and be well.